Welcome, everybody. My name is Marilyn Petito Devaney, and I will be presiding over this hearing. And I will read the letter from the governor. Dear councilors, I am pleased to nominate Christine Anthony to the position of Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I am enclosing the nominee's resume for your convenience. And I want to welcome you, and we are going to start at 1:05. I was here to a hearing up till 1, so I went to the ladies' room, and here I am. So anyway, I'd like to introduce the councilors, Councilor DePaula, Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Duff, Councilor Farrar, Councilor Neville. So first of all, I would.
Councilor Hurley's on Zoom too.
Oh, okay, she's down. Put her up. And Councilor Hurley is on Zoom. First of all, I want to ask anyone who's going to speak and the nominee to stand. Okay. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to start with your witnesses. And you have the Honorable Susan. Okay. I'm going to say Richie. Okay. And you know, so many don't know. You can sit right over here. So many don't know. I don't know Italian, but I know my mother was a Danucci, and 2 C's are a cha. And we grew up with the Richies from Watertown, and they said Ricky. And then Lorena married one of the boys and says it's Richie. Something. So anyway, so that's a little vocabulary lesson. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Judge.
Thank you. Good afternoon, honorable councilors. It's humbling to walk into the State House and to appear before all of you today. The important and necessary work that you do in approving judicial nominees ensures that the citizens of the Commonwealth get the most exemplary and the most excellent judges that the citizens need and that the citizens deserve. As a former probate and family court judge, I thank you for your dedication and your service in this process. My first appearance before the Governor's Council was in April of 1993, some 28 plus years ago, my first confirmation hearing. To say that I was nervous is an understatement. Even a little nervous today. I have since returned to testify here when I went from a circuit probate to a Worcester probate and family court judge, and several times I have returned to testify on behalf of wonderful colleagues who have been approved. There's no amount of law school success, and there is no amount of law practice experience that can prepare you, Christine, for the thoughtful and difficult questions. But that is the necessity, and that is the foundation of this important process. These public hearings ensure that the judicial nominee is vetted and meets the highest standards. Today, I ask that you consider this and critical importance of the probate and family court bench. Of course, every trial court is eminently important to our citizens, but no other trial court requires the same judicial temperament, demeanor, and patience from its judges who day in, day out deal with litigants' pain, their anger, their hurt, their betrayal, their suffering, their addictions, their mental health issues, and the losses that happen in the family. Losses of their home, losses of their children, losses of their income and their assets. Probate family court decisions do not merely affect the litigants hearing in front of the judge, but decisions affect their children, parents, the grandparents, extended family, the new partner, etc. Families have to live differently after they receive the probate and family court decision. Still must go on and function as a family in the future. Probate and family court decisions aren't one-time commercial business decisions. They're not one-time accident or negligent recovery decisions or criminal punishment decisions. Probate and family court judicial decisions are personal family relationship decisions. The litigants have lived together as parents or as spouses or as partners or as children or as siblings. And usually they need to continue to interact after their decision comes down. These are the reasons that require that you, the Governor's Council, carefully and thoroughly reflect on each probate and family court nominee, which I know that you do. Appearing today for Christine Anthony is a pleasure and it's an honor. It is easy to speak favorably and enthusiastically about her because of her breadth of experience that she has that no other probate and family court judge that I know possesses. I feel that I have shared in each of Christine's legal endeavors since she graduated from law school. We began our professional relationship. I was a 3-year judge in 1996, excuse me, and she was my law clerk. I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to say that she was much smarter than me then, and she still is one of the smartest lawyers that I have ever met or worked with. Christine helped me draft my 1996 surrogacy decision and findings in an area when there was no law and there was no precedent. At that time, the Chief Justice, you only served as a law clerk for 1 year. And the Chief Justice would then choose one of the first-year law clerks to be his Chief Justice. It was Chief Justice Dunphy at the time. And the Chief Law Clerk, the second year, would work in the Chief's office and administer the 25 law clerks. I think there were 25 or 26 in the good old days when we had so many law clerks, and also work for the Chief Justice. Christine easily got and handled that position beautifully. The trial court judges, all 48 of us, knew that we could call her with our questions and our issues, and that she would promptly and correctly answer our concerns. She also taught and addressed the judges at our semi-annual conferences about all updates in the law. She interacted with all 48 of us seamlessly and respectfully, and that was only 2 years out of law school. After her law clerkship, Christine was hired by Lee, Levine, and Bowser, and now a premier family law firm in Boston. Their clients have unique and important legal claims, and their clients expect a lot. I personally know the 3 partners and associates there all loved working with her. They still refer her cases. She remains very close professionally and personally with them. Christine left private practice in Boston when she and Eric's family was very young. Fortunately for me, she returned to the Worcester Probate and Family Court as an assistant judicial case manager. She was hired by the first justice and served as his assistant. However, that is not to say that the other 5, because there were 6 probate and family court judges in Worcester, didn't constantly call upon Christine to assist us with our cases and workload. She assembled appeals, she reviewed pleadings for judicial approval, she researched and drafted decisions, and she was known as the go-to lawyer that not only the judges relied upon, but the bar relied upon for correct answers and help. Christine and I worked together every day for her 5 years as a judicial case manager, and she clearly made me a much better judge. Since 2005, Christine has been in private practice. Until I retired in 2014, Christine appeared in front of me sometimes weekly on divorce matters, paternity matters, child custody jurisdiction matters, removal matters, guardianship of mentally ill, conservatorships, and equity litigation. She is always prepared. She is always respectful to the bench, to the clerks, to the probation department, to the staff, and to the bar. She is often hired by trial counsel, other trial counsel to handle their appellate litigation. Christine has served, and this is incredibly important to the bench, as a guardian ad litem in both family law matters, mostly custody, and also in probate matters, where the incapacitated person suffers from a mental illness or a mental disability. Most guardians ad litem don't have that breadth of experience, or lawyers, both the probate side and the family law side, and she is unique. I certainly did not have it when I went on the bench. She brings experience on the probate side, which is the wills and estates, but an awfully lot of mental illness cases. And she also on the family law side. No other judicial candidate has this wealth and breadth of experience. Outside of lawyering, Christine and Eric have raised two amazing and kind sons, Eli and Rafi, who are both now in college. Seen her juggle her practice and her parenting. She always volunteered and participated in her boys' lives as well as legal organizations. She should be very proud of the parent that she is, and she should be very proud of the spouse that she is. In closing, I repeat that I'm honored to be here to speak in favor of Christine's confirmation. It's really a very easy and pleasant task for me. There's no more qualified and experienced nominee. As you carefully consider her qualifications, you can confidently know Christine will always do what is right, and Christine will always do what is just. Thank you for your time and consideration today.
Thank you very much. Any questions? First of all, let me introduce the council. Councilor DePaula, Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Duff, Councilor Ferrara, Councilor Juvenile. And is there any questions?
Thank you very much.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Feel that part of the speak much on the.
The next.
Don't sue me,
Okay.
the campaign's bill.
Just give you my
Okay, Madam Chairwoman. That's a tough act to follow. I'm not sure.
Um,
What else I can say?
Say ditto.
No, I was thinking of I was thinking that ditto would.
With that.
I bet. My perspective is different than a former employer or somebody who works employee. My perspective is a person who's going to carry a bag in the probate and family court and appear before this candidate. My perspective is, and I concur with Judge Rickey, the temperament is vitally important in the probate and family court. I won't regurgitate what Judge Rickey said, but there was a judge in the probate court who had a great line. And people who come to the probate court for a divorce are generally good people on their worst behavior. And the criminals that go to court are generally bad people on their best behavior. Real true, it's
good.
Judge Sweeney. And I listened to Judge Rickey talk about the litigants that will come before Christine. And undoubtedly, a good probate and family court judge needs to have that temperament because these people can find themselves on their very worst behavior. And there's no doubt in my mind that Christine possesses that temperament. Her demeanor since I've met her back she worked for Camille Saruf Sr. all the way through, whether she was at Leon Levine, whether she was in the probate court solo, always has maintained a calm and pleasing, quiet demeanor. What is needed in the probate court with these people? Christine's legal acumen is unmatched. Truly, it's unmatched. I was talking to Council Jubenville outside, and in the district court, you could nominate a former prosecutor who has zero civil experience. And then she or he has to get up to speed to the detriment of the litigants in the district court. You don't have that problem here because Christine possesses the mental health side, the estate side, and the side. Her keeps her apprised and abreast of the changes in the laws that they come down from our SJC and our Massachusetts Court of Appeals. She is a tremendous candidate. She will be a strong candidate to the bench. We need it. We truly need it. I've been arguing for years that we get more probate and family court judges than we presently have, at least from Worcester in, to help the load. Christine Anthony is the easiest pick for this council this year, guaranteed. I can tell you I wholeheartedly, without any hesitation, was her candidacy to the probate and family court bench. She will be a pleasure to try in front of. It's important for judges not only to understand, mention about the estates, divorce, you have to understand evidence. And there are complex issues of evidence that we deal with at Atwood and Cherney, that we deal with at Leon Rivers and at McGrath and Kane. Valuation issues, understanding valuations, understanding evidence, how to get evidence in and keep evidence out. And as someone who has tried cases in the probate and family court, she has a very defined knowledge of evidence. I remember listening to Judge Rickey. I remember being one of those lawyers that would call out to Worcester, ask for Christine, say, can I just run this one? The knowledge level is next to none. So I thank you for your time. I would suggest to each and every one of you, this is the easiest vote of the year. And I look forward to approaching the bench before Justice Anthony Probate Court. Thank you for your time.
Give her just, wait, questions? Any questions? No questions. Now, how long have you known the nominee?
That goes back to the 90s, to the early, so Camille Roof Jr. and I, who was just appointed by your council to the Superior Court, worked together in the Middlesex DA's office, and we had to tolerate Councilor Kennedy, very young, and he took advantage of us, and I still hold a grudge against him today. But he also did work at his dad's office, and that was in the 96, yeah. Yeah, so all the way back to that. Now, we became much closer when I left the DA's office and Christine came into the probate in the court world. Well, when that was 97, and she showed me around. And she also worked for Steve Lander, who used to work with us. It's a very tight-knit group in the probate and family court bar.
Well, your testimony means a lot to me because you know her for all those years, so you know professionally and personally. And I've said it before, we've had people sitting there as a witness, and I've asked, how do you know, the nominee? Oh, I saw him once in court once, so I mean, that's not good enough, but yes, great, really.
The depth of our relationship is very deep, and I wouldn't be here if I wasn't fully behind her, and I am 1,000% behind Christine.
It's a tribute to her. Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Next, we have Joseph Sacco.
WebEx.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. You're on, Joe.
Thank you, Counselor. Good afternoon. And thank you for the opportunity to let me testify on behalf of Attorney Anthony as an Associate Justice in the Probate and Family Court. My name is Joseph Sacco, and for the last 24 years, I've been a court officer at the Worcester Trial Court. The first 18 years I spent in the Probate and Family Court, 14 of them with Judge Rickey. You were wonderful today, so I cut my speech in half after listening to you, Judge Rickey. And in the last 6 years, I've got to work with the grand jury. I impanel the grand jury, and I sit with them during their 3-month impanelment. I first met Attorney Anthony when she was assigned to the Worcester Probate and Family Court as a law clerk and during her 3-month rotation. I was immediately impressed with her. She was enthusiastic in her interest in the cases that came in front of the court. All the judges, she immediately got all the judges' respect. She returned in 2000 as an assistant judicial case manager. I observed her interacting daily with judges, lawyers, and pro se litigants. She treated everyone that walked into that registry with dignity and respect. Initially, I did not get to know her beyond her professional role. Every day, she would spend her lunch hour across the street with her oldest boy, who was in the daycare center there. After that, she had to take a short leave of absence because that boy had to have heart surgery. I was so pleased with his recovery and when she came back to the court. Shortly thereafter, her son entered the preschool. My son was in the 1st grade. She joined our little brown bag lunch group, and she sat with the court officers, probation officers, and judicial staff, and we would have our lunch together. And that's when we learned about each other's families, hobbies, and interests. We all were impressed with Attorney Anthony, her knowledge of the law, willingness to help people in the court. And one example of her willingness to help was back in the early 2000s in the old courthouse in Worcester. We were short-handed with interpreters. And every time we needed an interpreter to come in front of the court, the Department of Revenue, guardianship cases, we went to Attorney Anthony, and she was more than willing to help interpret those cases. And she was respectful, friendly to all the court or people that came in front of her. When she left in 2005, it was a huge loss to the court. it was evident from the onset that she was going to be a successful private practice attorney. She was always well-prepared, a fierce advocate for her clients, while being respectful to all the court staff, the judges, and to anyone that walked into that courthouse. But our friendship continued after she left the court. I had the pleasure of coaching both of her sons in flag football and watch each of them pass through the courthouse as summer interns. I know her to be caring, compassionate, and I've worked with many judges in 24 years in the court. And I know Attorney Anthony's knowledge, temperament, and ability to form relationships with the court staff. I am so confident that she will be a qualified, compassionate judge in the probate and family court. I want to thank all of you for letting me testify today on behalf of Attorney Anthony and answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony. I just wanted to, just to say that, first of all, I want to apologize. I thought you were here. I was looking for you in the room. So anyway, but so how long have you known the nominee?
I've known Attorney Anthony since when she did her 3-month rotation back, I think it was 97 and 98 in the courthouse.
Wow. Wow, that's quite a tenure. So you know the personal and the professional in the
I do.
person, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know her husband. I
Now,
know her, excuse me?
could you think of one adjective that you could use for her qualifications for her as a person?
She has a fantastic temperament for the court. I think that I witnessed many lawyers that come in front of the court, and her demeanor, the way she advocates for her clients, there's not too many people who've done what she's done and that came in front of the probate and family court.
And you've seen some people along the way, right?
I've seen many people along the way, Counselor.
Right, right. Well, thank you. Your testimony means a lot to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that completes our witness list. Is there anyone here that's not on the list that would like to say something about the nominee? Okay. And I do want to say, before I call on you, that we have talked, and everyone that's in this council chamber has been vaccinated. We're very careful, and we've been very fortunate. We're the only body that has met all through the pandemic, so I'm very proud of the Governor's Council for that. So first of all, welcome, and I'd like you to introduce your family and your guests.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today with me is my dad, Dr. George Anthony, my husband, Eric Richmond, of course, Judge Ricky, and my 2 dear friends and colleagues, Mary Jo Hart, Attorney Mary Jo Hart, and Attorney Aaron Shapiro.
Welcome. It doesn't have anything to do with your position, but I'm just so impressed on your husband's occupation. I love animals, and to be involved with the animals, I think that's really a wonderful profession. So now it's your turn. Well, is there anyone here in opposition? Hearing none, now it's your turn for your presentation.
Good afternoon. I would first like to extend my gratitude to Governor Baker for nominating me, and to Lieutenant Governor Polito, Chief Legal Counsel Bob Ross, Deputy Legal Counsel Lauren Green Petrigno and their staff, and all of the members of the Judicial Nominating Commission for their time and guidance throughout this process. I'd like to thank Counselor Devaney hosting my hearing today. She too has been very helpful in navigating this process. I would like to thank all of the counselors for speaking with me and giving due consideration to my application. Thank you to my witnesses, retired Judge Susan Rickey of the Probate Court, Attorney Marty Kane, and Joseph Sacco. I am humbled to be here today to be considered by you for the position of Associate Justice of the Probate and Family Court. I would like to take this opportunity to share my background with you and what has led me to seek this position. I have spent the past 25 years working for and in the probate court, It is where I began my legal career, first as a law clerk and chief law clerk, and then as an assistant judicial case manager in the Worcester Probate Court. In addition to holding those positions in the court, I have been in private practice for 17 years, focusing exclusively in the area of probate and family law. Growing up, I never thought I would become a lawyer. Never knew a lawyer. My parents came from working class immigrant families and both chose public service for their careers. My paternal grandfather fled Greece in the midst of the Balkan Wars in the 1930s and arrived in this country with little education or money and did not speak English. My grandmother grew up on a farm in New Portland, Maine, and made her way to Boston, where my grandparents met and married during World War II. In 1955, the family moved to Brockton, where my grandfather worked for Howard Johnson's developing frozen food, and where my grandmother later worked as a CNA at the VA hospital, also in Brockton. My mom grew up in Needham. Her father was Italian and her mother was the orphan of Swedish immigrants. My maternal grandfather, though lacking formal education, rose to be the town engineer of Needham. My grandmother was the kitchen manager at St. Joseph's Church and School, also in Needham. My parents met their freshman year at Boston College and spent the next 59 years together until my mother's death this past June. After graduating from college, they started a family and within 5 years had 4 little girls. We quickly outgrew our apartment in a triple-decker in Brockton and settled in Sharon, where my sisters and I grew up. My father began teaching history at Sharon High School in 1966, the year I was born. He taught high school by day and attended Northeastern at night to earn his master's degree in education. He later earned his doctorate in educational administration, attending classes on the weekends and summers, all while he continued teaching. In the later years of his career, he was a high school assistant principal and principal. He kept a watchful eyes on his daughters as we made our way through Sharon High School. My mom worked a variety of jobs, including teaching, as she raised me and my 3 sisters. She worked for many years at the IRS in the Taxpayer Advocate's Office. She was strong, intelligent, and opinionated. Always respectful of the opinions of others, she was never judgmental and never sought to impose her views on others. Both of my parents valued education, hard work, and new experiences that would broaden our view of the world. They often added to our busy house by hosting foreign exchange students. Because of this, my primary goal in high school was to participate in a foreign exchange program. I spent my junior year of high school living with a family in Colombia in a Rotary Club. It was there that I learned to speak Spanish. I knew that the financial resources were not available to my parents to pay for college. I attended UMass Amherst and worked to put myself through college. I studied for 2 semesters abroad, 1 in Spain and 1 in Colombia. While at UMass, I met my husband. After graduating, I worked for 4 years in a shelter for homeless families in Framingham. It was that experience that I knew I wanted to help families in crisis. I attended Suffolk University Law School at night, while my husband attended Boston University School of Social Work. We both worked full-time to put ourselves through our respective graduate programs. We will celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary in a few months. We have 2 wonderful sons who are each over 1,200 miles away at their respective colleges. They have brought love, laughter, and adventure to our lives. We are proud that they are embracing the opportunities they have and are successfully navigating the disruptions in their education due to COVID. I am grateful that my dad is here today. When I told him of the governor's nomination, he congratulated me and said, "You always accomplish what you put your mind to." My sisters have been a constant in my life. We are so close in age and did everything together growing up. We were always simply known collectively as the Anthony girls. My youngest sister, Mary, has been my paralegal for 16 years. My family acutely feels the recent loss of my mother. We are learning that we can hold grief and sadness in one hand and gratitude and hope in the other. We know that she is here with us today. Throughout my career, I have carried with me the early lessons taught to me by the talented lawyers and dedicated judges for whom I worked. They taught me the importance of preparation and of knowing the law and applicable rules, the importance of professionalism and civility, and perhaps, above all else, they instilled in me the belief that a lawyer's reputation for truthfulness and candor is of utmost importance. Counselors, I humbly suggest to you that I have the temperament, skills, substantive knowledge of the law and procedure, and the experience to serve the citizens of the Commonwealth as a justice of the Probate and Family Court. I commit to you that if I am confirmed, I will listen carefully to the people who appear before me and bring diligence, patience, and compassion to the position each day. Thank you for your time and attention. I ask respectfully for your support and your vote. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you very much. Let me start with, over here with you.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Counselor DePaula.
This isn't my practice area, but let me ask you a couple questions that will give some insight into how you approach things. So I'm hearing about the work you've done that gives you some empathy and compassion for folks who are struggling. And I heard comment from your witness that we often see good people at their worst moments who might be appearing before you. So could I count on you to have a very high bar for holding anyone in contempt? And what would that bar look like?
I do think that contempt actions are brought very frequently in the probate court, and we do need to make a finding of a clear and unequivocal order and an equal and unequivocal disobedience. I would enforce the orders as they've written, and the other part of that is a request for attorney's fees I would grant if I find a person to be in contempt.
I suppose I'm more wondering about managing the courtroom, folks who are in the courtroom before you.
Need a complaint for contempt?
From the bench.
Yes, yes. So I think my answer to you would be that I would hold people in contempt, and I don't think is particularly high. It is there a clear and unequivocal order and an equally clear and unequivocal disobedience?
What we've heard about your knowledge of mental health and your experience with issues around it. What do you see as being challenges that the probate and family court are dealing with? Right? How does a probate or family court judge address issues?
With respect to mental health specifically? So we see that very often when there's an allegation that a parent is unable to care for a child due to mental health issues. And as the judge, I think it's important to monitor that, of course, to ensure the health and safety of a child who may be impaired as mental health issues. So part of monitoring that, we have status conferences to be sure that that parent, for example, is complying with the treatment protocol and the regimen that has been suggested for that person.
And when it comes to matters of custody, besides the safety of the child, which is obviously paramount, what kinds of considerations would be persuasive to you in terms of modifying custody arrangements?
When it comes to modifying a custody arrangement, what we're looking for is a change in circumstances and that the change proposed is in the child's best interest. So we use that language, the best interest of the child, and that encompasses a lot of different issues, including, for example, is the child in school? Is the school appropriate? Or is the child receiving the medical care or the mental health care that the child may need, et cetera?
I've heard my colleagues on the council asking about experiences with travel distance between parents and whether or not that should impact custody arrangements or what the threshold is for them. How far away does it have to be before a judge would approve modifying custody interest of the child? What do you think about
Instances within the Commonwealth?
corrected?
So I'm a proponent, of course, that parents have equal access to their children. And sometimes people live far away. And I think the real question is how can we accommodate that? And more often than not, particularly if you have two willing parents, you can accommodate quite a distance. I would just want to be sure that both parties have the ability to participate in that transportation.
What if one parent is suggesting that the travel time to the other parent is not in the best interest of the child? So they're seeking to modify the custody.
I don't think I would be so persuaded if that's the only issue. Of course, we could talk about different factual scenarios. Perhaps a child has special needs, perhaps a child has ADHD. There could be some problems where that is a legitimate concern. But in general, I think it's important to promote a relationship with both parents for the child. And sometimes parents live far away, and sometimes there's going to be traveling involved.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions for you now. I look forward to having a chance to talk with you. It's entirely on my accord that we weren't able to talk prior to this here. I appreciate your answers to the questions. Thank you.
That's a done.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great to see you. Thank you for applying. Thank you for applying to this court, which desperately is one person we know said it's a big functional family. It has its challenges. Some of those I think are more managerial than anything else as I talk to you about. As you know, from your studies and everything, there are several issues that are most important to me as one of them, I know you have a lot of background in substance abuse. Fortunately, this is something that's almost epidemic right now in the courts, maybe not in the state, but in the courts. And so I think your 4 years previous to the law studies have probably have served you very well. I feel good. I actually am confident in all these issues with you, even though covered them in detail when we spoke. The other issue is, and I see you do work, the work you do with the ARC, is that like the ARC of Massachusetts?
That's attorneys representing children, so it's a volunteer.
But I wasn't sure. I'm very active in the ARC of Massachusetts, which is special needs people. That is an issue that's personal to me, as I had a special needs sister. And I feel that, the probate court, I think it's differently than maybe a district court, but special people have special needs, and not just in accommodation in the courtroom, but in how they are treated. Can you?
Are you referring to a litigant or a party who might have special needs?
Question, either a litigant or a party or a special, involved in maybe a contentious divorce or something like that.
I think that's more frequently where we would see that. And so when we have a custody dispute, for example, with a child who has special needs, perhaps on the autism spectrum, I think it's important that potentially there is an ARC attorney appointed for that child if the child is a little bit older. In addition to that, guardian ad litem would be important. We needed to investigate and have some information reported back to the court about whether or not those child's needs were being met by one or both of the parents.
Good. I feel strongly, I don't have any children, but I feel strongly that as elected officials, as people in the courts, we as adults, we're responsible for kids, and we should and need to be held to a higher standard. And in probate court, where you can have a direct impact on parents and children's relationships, safe, unsafe, equitable, it's a plethora of things. It's work. So I really applaud you to even apply for this. I'll digress from the last issue I want to talk about, but the one thing that is important to me, and we did talk about it a little bit earlier, in all of our courts, but in a court like this, I think there is a tremendous amount of emotional and spiritual stress that gets put on judges sometimes. Today, our judges are asked to be, priest, rabbi, teacher, social worker, nurse, doctor, all these things. You are dealing with some really tough issues in probate. Do you, and this is not a trick question, it only answers to the with this. To think about it. Do you feel that you have a strong support system that can hold you up in times of stress, and that might days that might be of distress to you? Witnessing and seeing horrific things, because you will.
I think being a divorce litigator for 17 years has prepared for that. Because we see those same things in our private practice. And in some ways, it can be harder because remember, they have, and so I think engaging that type of litigation has prepared me for the role. But as I look around the room, I see my support system. They're sitting against the
Marriages.
And so I have had that network. I think it's the only way you can succeed in private practice as a divorce lawyer.
Yeah, I just think it's a real tough thing that we don't talk about what judges are subjected to today. We live in not just a litigious society, but in a contentious society where if you do something that's unpopular or maybe turns out to be different than what you expect, all the onus, all the blame gets piled on you. And sometimes there are dire consequences that no one wants to do the wrong thing. No one wants the wrong outcome. But it's something that I think as governance counselors and I think we need to be acutely aware of it, of this. And I'm a chaplain, so I see some of the spiritual distress of at you. That's an intangible thing that can be tough. So I'm glad, I suspected, just knowing about this fella, that you probably have a good support. Underestimate it. Okay, so the last group of folk that I am always vocal about are people who are in the LGBTQI community, gay, lesbian, transgender, whatever. We have equal marriage in this country still, and hopefully forever in the state. So you're dealing with different issues than maybe we dealt with 20 years ago. Have you had experience in any litigation with parties in this group? And do you feel comfortable that you can be fair and open-minded? So stay out of judgment. Have you any experience working with folks in the transgender community?
Yes.
That is really important. Of all of these, everyone's really important, okay? Every person in the Commonwealth is, but any disenfranchised group is important, again, as I said, for us as the adults in the room, as the electeds, to stand up for and defend and recognize it. Somebody of something that they've done that may not be right or incorrect, as someone said, see them on the first day of their life. But to be able to know to use and that we don't understand everything. Some of this stuff is really, really tough. It's real. Because of that, in futures in your hands. And so knowing that deep compassion or empathy, I don't know that empathy would be the right word, but openness to learning is important. I think our justices are doing a very good job reading in this particular area. Our chiefs. they've done a lot of work on it. You came with a recommendation from a sitting judge who I have great respect for. I'm not an attorney, so I don't hear from a lot of the lawyers and everything all the time. Judges know how I feel about it, and they know what things mean than others. And so when someone reaches out to me and says, this is a good one, mentioned up, I do. And I'm glad that you've applied. I think I admire your courage for entering this this coliseum you were asking to enter. And you know, Godspeed to you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, thank you very much. There's only two councils here to ask. Is Mary still here? Zoom?
Yes,
Mary, I don't see you.
to be able to hear her.
I'm here.
Okay, good, okay. Mary presided at the last hearing, so Mary and I had 5 minutes before this hearing to run to the ladies' room, not to eat. So how you doing, Mary?
Okay. I don't have a lot of questions. Because of my background in being a judge and also on the governor's council, I have a network of judges all over the state that I can contact concerning different nominees for different jobs in terms of the justices and the clerks. I would indicate that I did speak to the nominee. We had a great conversation. I would further indicate that before I spoke to her, I called some of the people in the Worcester area who sat on the bench, and the recommendations that they gave her were glowing. She's phenomenal. She's always prepared. She's polite. She's courteous. She's thoughtful about everything you could imagine under the sun. So I really don't have any questions. I think she's going to do a great job, and I'll be voting for her. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you, Mary. No, I think Mary and I share the same thing that, you know, personal life experience is important to bring to the court, and you have it. And I think that's what Mary looks for and I look for too. What I like was that you did work in the court, in the probate court, so you have this experience. How do you think that helped you to understand the workings of the court, that you've had those two positions, what was it, 3 years or whatever it was before?
When you've worked in the court, you understand how the work flows. So as a lawyer, when you walk into the courtroom, you see the judge on the bench with a file in front of her, but you don't really know how it is that file actually got to be in front of the judge. And also how the file is organized and the types of things that you need to be able to find in the file to be able to process what's before you quickly and then be able to hear the case in a reasonable way. So I think having the behind the scenes work will be me, that knowledge.
Well, what I liked was when you said how you're going to work with people. And we don't often see that in when they're answering the greatest challenge of the court that you're going to. And you said that I would work closely with the staff assigned to me, including the sessions clerk, assistant judicial case manager, law clerk, probation officer, to run my session as effectively as possible. Okay, I think that's very important, that I want someone who works, not looking down, but working with the people in the courthouse. And that's what impressed me. The other thing that I see in you is that to decide to be a judge, you said that it was really, it was a process that you got through to decide. 55, that's wonderful. I don't want 40 years old, you know what I mean? And so that's the thing, you bringing your experience in, to the position. Um, That's so important. And you know what? that I liked about you, and I haven't seen this in the questionnaire, what you saw was the greatest challenge. And you say, access to justice for pro se litigants. And, you know, I can't even imagine how difficult that must be for someone who can't afford a lawyer, who's going into court. And for you to care, and you have said it's a long-standing problem. And, you know, so tell me, how do you, how will you plan to meet that challenge?
Of the pro se litigants. So I do think that it's important that every step of the way, when a person comes into the courthouse, that he or she is able to be attended to in an appropriate way. So when starting in the registry, with the registry staff, with the correct paperwork, with the correct filings. When that person does finally make it into the courtroom, it's important, if the person needs an interpreter, that we have an interpreter present, that the paperwork is filled out correctly, and if it's not, to help have the probation department help us make sure that that paperwork is complete, so that we can hear the case in an expedited manner.
And you know, and you're very sensitive to they don't have access to transportation and can't take off from work and fear of losing their job, or maybe they have mental health issues. You're bringing all this in that I think that, I know that Councilor Duff is concerned about that. We're concerned about mental health issues, and a judge is really up on that to understand, and what will you do, you know, when you do have someone with mental issues. Um, the other thing is, it's so valuable. You speak Spanish. I mean, you know, in today's society, that's so important to have a judge there, because I'm sure that there isn't always available someone to communicate or interpret. I don't know, especially with this pandemic, it must have really got worse, you know? So, what would you say you know, about that, as far as, um, how much authority do you have as a judge when you have someone and you know they're worried about they'll lose their job if they come to court and everything? What kind of things can you do?
We could continue with our Zoom hearings. There are some times when a telephonic hearing might be appropriate. Do think we can accommodate schedules, or perhaps they need a 2:00 hearing. They work in vice versa. So I think there are ways that we can accommodate people's schedules.
What is your position in joint custody? You've been involved in that. Tell me some of the cases and how it's worked out.
So I believe that parents should have equal access to their children, and children should have equal access to their parents. I've litigated a number of those cases seeking shared physical custody, shared legal custody. Those are difficult cases. Oftentimes there's a guardian ad litem involved, or attorney is appointed for the child. But for most people who are seeking equal parenting time, that fight is worth it for them.
One of the, you know, in your questionnaire, I just didn't get it. Maybe you can explain it. The father had the child from Tuesday to Sunday, and the mother had Sunday to Tuesday. How is that joint custody?
In that particular case, that was related to the distance that the parties lived and where the child was going to school. So the way that that was arranged, and that was a judgment of the court, that the child spent the majority of his school time with the father, but then there was sort of, I won't call it makeup time, but there was more time for the mother on holidays and summer. So that if you looked at the year calendar, it came out to be more or less equal.
I'd like to talk about removal. I have brought this up before. This was the first year I was a governor's counselor, and voted for someone on the probate court. And you know, I had that feeling, oh, I don't know, and I voted for her. But I had some apprehensions. And unfortunately, I don't know why, because I didn't have anything specific. She's a good person. She had, she had some qualifications. Then I saw her in the Boston Globe, and this was like 2 or 3 years after she was a judge. And it talked about her decision in a removal case. She had a case where the father and mother were divorced, and they had 3 little close in age toddlers. And she was asking to move to Oregon with her 3 children. And the father had been very devoted, lived near, saw them almost every day. Even Christmas Eve, he'd stay overnight to see them Christmas morning. So anyway, she was asking to move to Oregon. What kind of criteria would you use to allow someone to remove the children?
In that particular situation, I would want to know what was the basis of her request to remove the children to Oregon. Had she remarried? Did she have a new job? Was her family there? Was there some reason why she needed to leave Massachusetts? I'm not hearing that any of those facts were present in that particular case, but in general, I would be thinking about what is in the children's best interest, and clearly maintaining a relationship with their father here would be of paramount importance to me when I'm considering what is in the children's best interest.
Well, in that case, and imagine it got in the paper. She had no job waiting. She didn't know anyone there. She didn't have family. She didn't have friends. She had nothing waiting for her. And to me, it was vindictive. I mean, now that poor father is actually divorced from his children. There's no way he's going to be able to communicate with them. So she gave him, I hate that word, visitation, right? 1 hour, 6 to 7 on the computer with the children. You can't hug a computer. I mean, I just couldn't believe that she did that. So I guess the point I'm making is I don't have a crystal ball. And I only, I vote on someone and you hope that they are what they appear to be. And sometimes they're not and they let you down. And she absolutely did. And I think of that poor father. I feel so bad for he and his children. And so I like your answer. I really like that. That's what I would want to hear. So what is your relationship between the Department of Children and Family? Do you work with them at all?
So CF, as we call them, occasionally they're involved in a case of mine. I don't have too many cases where DCF is involved, but certainly we do see those cases in the probate court.
Well, I'm not a fan of theirs. And you can say, well, they're overworked, they got too many workers or whatever. But, you don't even have to be an 8th grader. If you go into a home and you see a 7-year-old that's the weight of a year-old child, something's wrong. And they close these cases. I'll never forget the baby Bella. Mother lied, said she was sleeping or she was away and everything. And, they had her in a bag and they threw her in the water. I mean, those are the things that really bother me. And I don't know what happens. Does anyone make any changes? Do they change the department head or whatever? I don't know. But that really is a concern of mine, So will you work with them closely as a judge?
As I said, there are a number of DCF cases that do come into the probate court. The majority of the cases where there's a care and protection and a child's in foster care are going to be found in the juvenile court. So we don't see them as frequently as we used to. When Judge Rickey was on the bench, the probate court did hear those cases, but as I say now, they're primarily in juvenile court.
See, that's the thing that bothers me, and I hate reading these stories because I can't sleep after I read them. And there was one recently that I read, and it was a young couple who had a 4-month-old baby. It was taken away because they were abusing the child. They sent it back and they killed him. How often does that happen? I mean, what kind of judgment is that? If someone does it once, isn't that once enough? I mean, give that child a life, But that really concerns me. So I don't know whether how much recommendation you can make as a judge, on a organization like that. I don't know, department. Do you have much influence as a judge?
Well, ultimately, it is up to the judge to oftentimes to approve of placement of a child. So there can be some influence on that process, but really that's going to occur in the juvenile court.
I'm interested in some of your writings, and I think that's wonderful that you write. I think that's so important. One of them was, what was it, psychological witness? What was that one? What was that about?
So we have, we call them the blue books, but they're, I think they're put out by MCLE and they're on topics. And so over the years, I've written some chapters within that book. And one of the pieces that I wrote was about the use of guardian ad litems. And that was the psychological aspect of that particular chapter.
Now, you've been doing that for a while. Do you stay with that one child, or when you're, a guardian ad litem?
When I'm appointed to be a guardian ad litem to investigate and report back to the court regarding a specific child, once I file my report, my role is over. Sometimes it gets resurrected. I have been the GAL on a key on the same case at least twice, meaning some years have passed and then I'm asked to, something else happens and I'm asked to do another report.
The other thing is, I mean, if you're 15 years old and and you want to go to the school, that's such an important decision when you have divorced parents, that they really have to think what's best for the child, not what's more convenient for them and or whatever to get them there. And that was your writing about that 15-year-old boy, and I was very happy about the result. You want to talk about that?
So that was a case that I had tried some years earlier. It was a custody case. And my client worked at a private school and the child had the opportunity to attend that private school. It's a very prestigious school. And mom was objecting to his attendance there. Her position was that he should attend public school. And so we filed a complaint for modification and the judge appointed a guardian ad litem to investigate and report back on the issue of school. And ultimately the child was able to enroll in school.
Yeah. And that's so important at that age too, because that, they bond their friendships and everything at that time. So, so now, have you ever kept in touch with these people that you were a guardian ad litem to see what's happened in their lives?
I've not kept in touch with anyone that I can think of where I served as a guardian ad litem. However, it's not unusual to hear what has happened through the lawyers who have represented the parties.
So you've been involved with children with learning disabilities and autism and mental issues. So in that position, do you recommend, services for them? Tell me what you do.
So it would not be unusual if I'm asked to make recommendations as a guardian ad litem to set forth some things that I think should happen. So for example, perhaps the child needs to have an evaluation through the town. I might recommend that. Perhaps it's been told to me by the pediatrician that the child needs occupational therapy or needs speech therapy. I would make those recommendations, things of that nature.
Now, did 209As ever come up before you that are in violation, or is that not in that court?
Violations of the 209A would occur in the district court, generally, not in the probate court.
Okay. So tell me about some of your writings. There was another writing that I thought, but that one, psychological, but that I still didn't understand that fully, what that person is that you're talking about.
I believe in that chapter, what we were talking about were the experts that you could use, like a GAL or a mental health professional, to act as an expert in a custody case.
There was a case that, the thing is, when you read the JNC questionnaire, you don't know the rest of the story because you can't put the whole thing in. So can you tell me about that paternity case? And the father had 2 young children and the mother died unexpectedly of a brain aneurysm. And so he was saying, this man came and said he was having an extramarital relationship with the client's wife. And so what happened?
So the gentleman who alleged that he was the biological father of the children filed a complaint in equity in the probate court to establish.
Does he have to establish his DNA first, or how do we do it?
DNA would come second. So the first thing that he has to prove under the case law is that he had a substantial relationship with the children before he could request the genetic marker test. So the trial that we had was about that narrow issue of whether or not he could prove to the court by, I believe, clear and convincing evidence that he had a substantial and material relationship with the child. He was unable to prove that.
He said he was father of both children, right?
He did.
So does the wife who died, does her family have any input in this, or how does that work out?
Particular case was just as between the two parties were the father, who was the legal father, and the gentleman who alleged he was the biological father.
And so what happened to the children?
So the judge denied his request, and it went to the appeals court, and the appeals court affirmed the trial court's decision, and the children remained in the custody of their father.
Even if there's medical evidence that he is the father, he still would not get custody?
Well, the medical evidence would be the genetic marker test. And in order to reach the point of having a genetic marker test, you first need to get over this initial hurdle of proving to the court that you had a substantial and material relationship with the children.
Really, you're so qualified to even ask you any questions on these, but is there one divorce case that comes to mind that was really, probably the most rewarding, or what was the most disappointing result?
I think for me, the most rewarding cases in general are typically when a person comes to me and feels it really is at their worst point, at the lowest point in their life, and they feel that they will never come out of this divorce as a whole person. And we work together for a long time. Divorces take a long time. And it's gratifying for me to see the way in which a person can develop his or her self-confidence, see herself in a different way going out into the world. And when you come out on the back end of that, I think those are the gratifying cases.
The other thing is, it has nothing to do with this particular thing, but I just wanted to say that they're doing a redistricting because of the population shift. And I don't know what I'm losing and what I'm gaining, but I only know I'm losing Westboro. So you may be the last nominee from Westboro that I'll have the honor to preside. So I'm so happy it's you because I'm so pleased with your appointment. But yeah, I guess it's the district coming from the western part of the state has decreased, and mine has been stable and it's been increasing. So they have to shift, so I'm gonna lose something. I have no say about it, so I don't know what, but I only know Westboro, and I'm going, oh, like a knife in my heart, 21 years, because you make friendships, But I can't tell you how pleased I am and how proud I am to be presiding over the hearing. It was a pleasure to meet with you for all that time, and I know your boys would love the Belgian waffle. I know they would. I bet that your husband wouldn't, or your father.
We go back when they're home for Christmas.
No, you have to. But so I'm going to adjourn now. I'm just very pleased. And so next week, December 8th, when we have our public assembly with the Lieutenant Governor, I will present your name and we will vote. And so I'm very happy. I really, you know what I'm happy about, that we have someone really, really qualified, because sometimes we miss the boat. And to me, and you said it to me when we met, and you said it in your questionnaire, it took a lot of time for you to think about, should I apply to be a judge, 55? That's really a lot of thought to make a decision like that. So I'm very pleased, really. Any more questions, Eileen? Are we done? Okay.
you so
Thank you very much, and how wonderful to have your father here, to be so proud. That's great.
Good luck to you. I know you'll do a great job.
Thank you, Counselor Hurley.
You bet. Take care.
Done, Mary.
Bye-bye.
Daddy's the best.
Congratulations that you were wonderful.
And I got a meeting tonight.
It is.
I should have said.